Roku sticks, Amazon Fire Stick, Google Chromecast, and on all smart TVs 2016 forward. It's free. Download it today. Folks, how we doing today? It's another episode of the Sports Den. My name is Scott Schertzen. As always, is with me, Jared Robeson, and back once again after basically all the many days of work, which better busy than bored, Mr. Rob Stats. How you gents doing?
I'm doing good. How about yourself, man?
No complaints. How about, Stats?
I'm good. Glad to be back. I missed you guys.
Yeah.
It's not the same without you, man.
It's a little weird. It's a little weird last week, I got to admit.
I was super impressed between the guests we had on and you guys. The predictions were on point. So much stuff. Like Alex from MLB basically called Game 6. He's like, it's not going to come down. It's going to come down to the managers. Yeah. And sure enough, the talk of the town after that game was Cash pulling Snell too early, and you got the Giant game, I think the night before, this on social media, you predicted, you're they're going to be super competitive. And I was like, man, I was like, we got to get back on the air. We're doing a good job.
I was going to say, well, even a blind mouse finds cheese, as the saying goes in this case, right? So anyway, got a special guest coming in about 4:15. If you're familiar with Orange is the New Black, Boardwalk Empire, Sneaky Pete. I know, Rob, you know a little bit about that one. We have Mr. Mike Houston coming on, who is a longtime and suffering Denver Broncos fan since he grew up in Colorado. So we'll talk about a little bit about Denver, growing up, basically being a fan of Elway, seeing how they are right now. Whatever questions you guys have, whatever question anybody else has, fire away. So that'll be about 13 minutes from now. But between now and then, I know we just want to talk a little bit about college football. I want to talk about the Jets because I did predict, and basically, Eduardo, if you're listening, you owe me, me and Joe basically bet $20 of your money on the outcome of that game. Because I predicted that the Patriots are going to win, Eduardo, I don't know if they told you this, you actually owe us $20. So sorry, Mr. Producer Guy. We'll have to discuss this after the show, if and when it never happens. So anyway, give me your thoughts about basically, Clemson last week. Give me a thought about Notre Dame, Alabama, and the rest of it. Start off there.
Let Jared, you can go first.
Oh, you want me to go first? Well, I have to say, if that's Clemson's backup quarterback, the future is definitely bright.
Whoa.
Because he did a phenomenal job.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, you kind of expect that now at this stage because Clemson is a powerhouse team. So you expect the backup to come in and fill the role immediately. But it was really such a good game. But at first, obviously, he was a little shaky at first. Notre Dame started off really well, but then Clemson came back. I feel like if some of their defensive starters weren't hurt, some of those plays would have been made. Mm-hmm. On what's Notre Dame's quarterback's last name again?
Ian Book.
Booker. There it goes. I was about to say Booker, but yeah, Book. That last play at the end of the game to seal the win, great.
Yeah,
I think at first DJ, I don't know how to say his last name, starts off rough at the beginning of each game, just like at Boston College, and then eventually finds the flow.
Uwe Angolole. I had to practice this a few times.
Yeah.
Uwe Angolole.
Say it again?
I got it once, now I can't do it again. He's DJ Uwe Angolole. Samoan. He came to
Uwe Gago.
It's
Angolole.
The trick to Samoan last names is there's 2 letters per syllable.
Okay.
That's usually the trick. It's never more than 3, so it's always like Tua Tagovailoa. It's never, people always try to stretch it out, Americanize it with the longer names. It's actually the shorter is probably the more accurate one. But I agree with Jared. That was that somebody described him as they said they were talking to Dabu and during the commentary, they said someone called him and said, do you have a quarterback factory where you just pump these guys out? And he goes, oh no, I think it was a laboratory, because they described DJ as basically a hybrid of Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. And he's like, yeah, he came in, big dude. I was like, the future looks real bright. And I think, before we get to the Jets, if the one thing that was holding Trevor Lawrence back was who's going to take over for him, is the team going to be good right after he leaves? That question's kind of been answered. He's the heir to the throne is there in DJ, however you want to pronounce his last name. By the way, huge Samoan. His dad looks like he eats smaller humans for lunch. His dad was out there let's go. And I'm like, this is a large man who looks like he plays rugby and he's the whole team.
19 years old, 6'4", 249. So,
massive.
Yeah, I mean, granted, it's a little early, I think, to say that he is the lock for the future. I mean, he is, at this point, only a sophomore. He's only 19 years old. But yeah, based on the last 2 games, I mean, his against Boston College, 30 for 41, 342, 2 touchdowns, and a run for one. Last week against Notre Dame, number 2 Notre Dame, 29 for 44, 439, 2 touchdowns, and also another running touchdown. So, yeah. I don't want to say right out of the gate immediately that he is going to be the future of the team, but honestly, right now, I think it's his team to lose. It really is.
And what really kind of cost them the game was like the turnovers that weren't his fault. Like Etienne fumbled for the second week in a row and it got returned for a touchdown. So like Jared said as well, they were missing half their defense. And right after the game ended, I kind of said it that if they see them in the ACC championship game with Trevor Lawrence and a healthy defense, I'm taking Clemson. And I'm an Irish fan. I'm taking Clemson. This was the first time Brian Kelly beat a top 5 team in his tenure at Notre Dame. Like I've never been sold on him as a head coach for that reason. And I'm like, okay, this is one time you should have beaten them because in all honesty, they were the favorite going into it. Backup quarterback, missing half their defense. And they still almost found a way to kind of botch it up. Like Book fumbled running into the end zone. Like he did his like Daniel Jones impression or something. And just like, wow, I was like, oh, there goes the ball. And
no, that's Cam Newton's job to do a Daniel Jones impression. Based on that.
Speaking of college football, breaking news, Alabama, LSU is postponed.
COVID?
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. Just got the notification.
All right. Yeah. We'll get through this. You know, I mean, I don't know. Fossey said basically another year at most. We should be more or less back to normal. But hey, at least we have something again. We have sports again. We've got football again. We got baseball again. You know, we have some semblance of normalcy. Granted, it was a little weird last night watching Monday Night Football to an empty crowd, as it is every week in every game. But at least, you know what? We got something. It could be a lot worse that way. You know,
and some stadiums they have fans. Like
they do.
They've got them in other places. So
yeah, I mean, there's a socially distant aspect of it. I think Dallas had it over the weekend. Kansas City's had it. The World Series, obviously, we talked about that. They had it. So you can do it under the right circumstances, and as long as it's protected and taken care of and everything. But it's still a work in progress.
I think they're getting a hang of it too. Like with Pittsburgh, Vance McDonald test positive. So now started last week with Matt Stafford, somebody on the line. It wasn't on the line. Someone he was in close contact with tested positive. So they got the whole reverse tracing back or reverse contact tracing. And so right now Roethlisberger's in quarantine. And if he tests negative the next couple of days, he'll be back in time for Sunday.
But it was a wild week though. You know, I mean, Pittsburgh ended up holding on to a surprisingly challenging Dallas team. Nobody, I think, saw that one coming. I didn't in this case.
I actually did.
You did?
Ironically, because I thought they were so tired from the Ravens game that Dallas was going to jump out, and probably get a start. But then again, Dallas is so bad that they couldn't keep the lead. You know what I mean? So
it's the same problem that, like we've talked about this a few times with the Giants and the issue that they have, where you start losing it later on. But you can tell it's 2020. When you need a 10-point come from behind victory for the Patriots to beat the Jets.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a game like that, this was exactly what I think the Patriots needed. They needed to get back in the win column. They needed a Jets team to do it, but boy, they did it by that much. I mean, that game could not have gotten much closer than it did.
I know we were talking all on Messenger and stuff while we were watching the game, and there was that one play, like the first half of the game, like just like, when I saw it, Cam Newton just looked like he checked out, like he was not there. Like they had that fumble and he was just standing there like, oh, the ball's on the ground. Okay. And he just didn't look like Cam. And then suddenly he came out in the second half and it looked like more of the Cam Newton we saw earlier in the season where he was running and he was being aggressive. And aside from the turf monsters that apparently exist in the Meadowlands, like I don't know if it's the ghost of Jimmy Hoffa reaching up from below, tripping people. Like, because everybody from other teams falls down and trips on this turf, except for the Jets and the Giants. Like Daniel Jones tripped on somebody else's turf.
That's just somewhere else, yeah. But I mean, Cam Newton did overall put up good numbers. He did rush for 2 touchdowns. He did get 274 yards passing on 27 completions. So he did have a decent job of it, And the big thing is, I don't believe he turned the ball over at all. The big issue was, I mean, Flacco had a good game with the exception of that one big pick later on that allowed him to really come back. But if the Jets were ever going to have a shot at being able to win and get into the win column, this game would have been it.
Exactly.
Demoralizing, I think, is the word I would probably use to describe that loss for the team.
It was almost like they forgot. They were like one of my friends who's a Jets fan was like, I feel like they forgot they were tanking. and all of a sudden they looked up and were like, "Whoa, wait a minute! Like, hold on."
It's probably in some point true because that team is so used to losing that being, winning by 10 late, mildly late in the game is an unusual concept for a team like that. So you play a little bit differently because it's not something you're used to. You're used to playing from behind. But I think, I don't know. Are they going to be the worst team in the league? Probably. But do you think there could be anybody else that actually upsets them for the number one spot as worst?
I don't know. Jacksonville looks good with Luton in place of Gardner Minshew. So I think they might sneak a couple games out. And just looking at the standings, I was like, it's kind of it might be a lock. Like, I think Dallas is going to win a few more. The Jets. What didn't surprise me yesterday was that having seen Gase in Miami, the New England Patriots are kind of to Adam Gase are kind of like what the Washington football team is to Daniel Jones. Like they're his spin. Like he always does well against them when you think he's going to when he was in Miami, he'd always pull off this like miracle upset at the end of the season against New England and cost us like 4 spots in the draft. So when he was out there last night, I'm like, okay, like this is kind of typical Gase. Like you kind of know how to get under Belichick's skin and you make some moves. And I was shocked because when I got home right in the start of the game and Mekhi Becton's walking off the field and I was like, oh, they're going to be all over Flacco. He's not as mobile. And they were just pounding the ball, running the clock out. And like they played ball control. They tried to, keep Cam off the field as much as possible and keep it simple for Flacco. And it helped that that's the first time I think Flacco or Darnold has had the full receiving core, like the top 3 guys in Crowder, Perryman, and Mims. So and he definitely connected with Perryman, who he played with in Baltimore. So it'd be nice to see what Darnold can do with a healthy receiving core the next couple of weeks when he gets back from the shoulder injury.
True. Now coming in from Obi Schottenfeld over here was good enough to host last week. The Cowboy QB situation is really bad. Again, we've talked about this before. Do they stay with Dak for next year? What direction do you think they're going to go in?
Get a backup.
I mean, because remember now they are tied for the worst record in the NFC East. Granted, they have the advantage over in wins over against the Giants, but that team itself could end up as the last place team in the NFC East, which is really saying something.
The kid they had yesterday looked good.
He did.
Like he's got experience in other leagues and stuff, and they brought Cooper Rush back. But the big thing for yesterday too, I watched that game, was the defense. Van Der Esch was back. The other middle linebacker was back. They plugged up the middle. They basically had a great defensive scheme plan of like they came out in that bare front, took away between the tackles, which is kind of Pittsburgh's forte with James Conner, and they forced them to run off tackle, and that's where they struggled. And then Ben obviously just put the team on his back. They emptied the backfield, went 5 wide, and it was a great game. That was a vintage like Tony Romo announcing and stuff of like, oh, right here, he's gonna throw the screen, like you're gonna play 7 yards off, he's gonna throw here, and Ben just picked them apart down the stretch and brought them back into the game. And Mike Tomlin is a coach who loves any reason not to kick a field goal or an extra point.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as he had no choice. Like they were getting so much penetration on the kicking game. He's like, I got to go for 2. I got to go for it on 4th down. So it was a great game. And I'm glad the Cowboys aren't like people joke that the 2020 Cowboys were just doormats. So I think, like I said, they're going to be competitive. I don't think they're going to have the number 1 pick overall. They'll win a couple of games, especially being in the East. But we'll see how they do it. If they can get anything that resembles decent play from a quarterback, it's going to take the workload and the pressure off of Zeke, and the defense can keep them in games once they get healthy.
But the big thing is, and I'm looking over the stats for that game. Yes, Roethlisberger put the entire game on his back, 29-42, 306, 3 touchdowns. But what's really impressive to me is what they were able to do against the run. I mean, the Pittsburgh running game, 22 yards from James Conner, 46 yards overall. That was a team that was completely stifled on, for the run game. And it's a run game that they're going to need to be stronger. They're going to continue. But I give Dallas a lot of credit that they were able to force Roethlisberger to put the game on his back to be able to eke out this win and score 15 points rather in the 4th quarter. That easily could have been the upset of the week, I think.
No, definitely. And as we said before, the Cowboys' talent on the team is not bad. It's just they're just underperforming for some reason. You know what I mean? Like they could be a really good defensive team. if they put everything together. I just don't understand like what the issue is.
The other thing with that, what I found interesting was I think the game wouldn't have been as close if Ben didn't go to the locker room early.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was in the tunnel, and then all of a sudden they're like, fumble, they got the ball back. And I'm like, and I was on Twitter, I'm going, Jeannie Bouchard's boyfriend is playing quarterback now because Ben's in the locker room. And I think if Ben is still, if he's on the field and he comes out, they may at least get a field goal out of that. Like I think he gets him a little bit closer in that short amount of time where Mason Rudolph came in, and I was like, wait, what? Because I swore, I didn't even realize he left the field till they said it. They're like, oh, he's in the locker room. I was like, he just threw a touchdown pass after he got hurt. Like, he's fine. Like, what happened? They're like, no, he's in the locker room. I was like, oh, this is good. I thought he wasn't going to come back, and then he came back. I was like, all right, they should be all right if he's healthy.
But yeah, that's an eke out of a win. And basically, if Pittsburgh ever had it. But going forward, who do the Giants have? Let's talk about this a little bit.
They got Philly this week?
I think they got Philly this week. Yeah, I just lost it. Oh, well. That's a big game. I mean, right now, I'm not going to say it, but I think the Giants can still pull out this. I think they've got a shot at still, and this is a really weird thing, to still be able to maybe win the division this year. I know one game is not enough, but you know what? I'm loyal. I'll take the wins as I can get them. It's a terrible team, sure. But
it's a terrible division. Like, Washington's down to basically who was their third string quarterback, and Alex Smith now. I mean, he's not a third string theoretically, but
no, he's a solid team. He's a solid player.
And he looked good. I was happy he came in and he looked comfortable. And obviously comeback story for him. So I was happy he did some good things yesterday. And I was like, all right, I don't think you're going to win the division though. I think they're kind of fading too.
Oh, they totally are. But I still have hope anyway, because you know what? I have to.
No, honestly, they have a shot. Like, I kept joking. I said if they could play the Washington football team the rest of every division game, they'd win. But I think they could beat Philly. Philly's banged up. Their receiving core is kind of banged up. Running back situation was a mess. They were using Boston Scott because Sanders was out. So injuries are going to, a part of the game. And if the Giants can stay healthy and they can catch teams at the right time, yeah, as crazy as it sounds, like a couple weeks ago, we're like, we said it jokingly, like they could win the division. Like, no, they could legitimately win the division. And that was the first time we talked about. It was the second time in his career, first time all season that Daniel Jones didn't have a turnover.
Yes.
Hello.
Mr. Houston, how we doing, sir?
Hey, Big Mike.
How's it going?
Hey.
How are you guys?
Yeah, good. How you holding up?
Doing the best I can in a pandemic.
Oh yeah, better than it was 6 months ago. At least people are starting to work again and everything like that. Hooray!
Yeah. We got to tamp that down. The cases are rising.
Yeah,
be careful. Everybody, just be careful.
Yeah. Well, the good news is every time you're on a film set, you get to have the privilege of another, either shallow nose or a full out PCR test. So I've had nine in less than 3 weeks myself.
That's amazing. I've had 0. I haven't been on a set, man. Brother.
Well, I'm standing it a lot on Prodigal Son, so every time it's like, all right, here you go, up they go. So
that's hilarious. You probably stood in for a couple of characters I've auditioned for.
I don't know. I mean, this was Christian Borle in this case. If you remember him from Smash. So
yeah. That's
so
awesome, man. I didn't know you were doing that.
Yeah, you got to get health insurance in any way you can.
Do that. Yeah.
So how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, man. Just like I said, kind of taking it day by day. Enjoying what I can out of. It's just crazy, Everything's just crazy right now. So, it's funny we're talking about sports. It's like sports is supposed to be the thing right now that would like level me, like bring me back down, and like be like, oh, it's a distraction. Great, I'll go watch sports for the distraction, and then it's just impossible. I just literally got the update that A&M and Tennessee and LSU, Alabama, they're all postponed due to COVID.
We just talked about the LSU one, yeah.
Oh yeah, you know what I mean? Like, anyway, and then to see that Ben Roethlisberger was put on the COVID-19 reserve list, and you're like, but you played in that game, dude. Like, I don't know. But then there's that also. You remember that story about the Titans and Vikings? How tons of the Titans got COVID, but nobody from the Vikings got it, and they played an entire football game against each other. It was like, okay, I don't I don't understand.
Yeah, it's confusing. Like I know Ben is in quarantine. Dude, it's like the contact tracing because Vance McDonald was the one who tested positive.
Copy. Okay. So when
Yesterday.
if they're within that little
They
radius,
couldn't have been any closer if they were unless they were in a relationship. They said they sat next to each other on the plane and their lockers are next to each other. I think in the facility and when they were on the road in Dallas. So they were like, yeah, you just go to
okay.
your
So
room.
that's what the COVID-19 reserve list is for, players that might that were around other players.
Yeah, for close contact, because that's what happened with Matthew Stafford.
I just learned something.
Yeah, Stafford had that last week. Someone outside of outside of the Lions, he was near pop positive. So he went into like the 3-day quarantine, did the testing, and then everything was negative. So he played on Sunday.
Okay.
And then I think he got a concussion and left the game anyway.
Well, yeah. I was like, especially at his age, it's like, well, listen, man, like you're gonna have to sit some of these out anyway. So
it doesn't necessarily mean you have COVID when you get on the list,
Right.
Yeah.
Now I know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, you have to get like 2 tests. I think you have to get 2 tests negatives within 24 hours or something like that.
48 or three tests in 48 hours.
48, yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
It is confusing though, because like with Nick Saban tested positive that before the Georgia game. And then they were using the same protocols for like close contact for a positive test. And I was like, this is a little crazy. Like if you tested positive, there should be no discussion. You go away for a week or two.
You need to be away from the sideline. Yeah. Like you need to be in your house. Like it's
unless
hard.
You're an LA Dodger. Unless you're an LA Dodger. Yeah.
That was something else too, man. That's such a hard one though. Like I went back and forth because I was like, I get it. Like that's just one of those. It's what is that? Occam's razor. Like this guy worked his ass off his whole life to get to a situation in which they're in this position to win a World Series. They win a World Series, and then he's being told, "Yeah, you can't go out and celebrate that because we literally found out you had COVID during the game." I still don't understand how that worked, but regardless, that's a hard one because I honestly, dude. And I care about everybody, but there's a moment where I feel like I probably would have run out there, but then I think I probably would have stopped about 20 feet before I got to the pile. It was like, you know what? I can do it from here too. I can scream and yell and play,
Or at least wear a mask. Like that, he came out, he called their bluff. But the whole situation, like first his test was inconclusive. Right. So that's why he played. And then during the game, they're like, no, we got a conclusion. You tested positive. And he went out and he was like, okay, he left the game and he came back in and they were like, you can't go out there. And he's like, stop. Basically was like, stop me from going out there. Like he called there. He's like, I'm going out. And like you said, fans even kind of defended him. They're like, can you promise him he's going to win another World Series? Like, because you work your ass off for it.
That's what I'm saying. Like these guys put in the work, to talk about the NFL a little more too. This is one of the things I was telling Scott before, what stuff we wanted to talk about. And like, I'm really kind of focused on like watching sports and what COVID and sports is doing together, like how COVID is affecting our lives and athletes' lives, right? Because it's interesting for me. I was like on this side of we should just shut everything down, just get this thing under control. There's some athletes that have had some amazing quotes. I forgot who said it, but one of the guys said, sports are a gift for a functioning society. Professional sport, like it's a gift that we get, but it's like, we pay for it too. But more importantly, it's this idea that with COVID coming in and doing the things that it's doing, it's like, I can't watch a football season normally because I didn't play fantasy football this year for the first time in like 20 years. I couldn't because I was like, I will go insane. Like I'm one of the guys that sits in front of my computer for 8 hours a day. Yes, for fantasy, right? And I'm like, if you throw COVID into the mix, man, I like adjusting my lineups and trying to find free agents and like based on that stuff alone. I mean, kudos to the guys that are to the guys and ladies out there pulling it off because what a fascinating time to play fantasy football because it's like it's just a whole new rule that you got to abide by. But like. It's more about like when these guys, I'm on the fence because professional athletes to get to that level. I played high school football and then I tried to walk on at the University of Colorado I had the opportunity. They gave me a shot. I realized that football at that level is a whole different thing than a hobby in high school, And so I decided, like, I'm gonna leave that to the guys that that really kind of see this as their future. And that's the point, right? All of these guys that make it in the NFL, especially like the rookies this year, especially let's talk about the kid from Jacksonville.
Mm-hmm.
How can you tell that guy now? Like, if you look back and go, imagine if we said, "Hey, man, you're gonna have to sit out your rookie year." He's like, "I'm an undrafted free agent. You think I'm gonna have a shot without showing, what I can do?"
Sure.
And now he's showing us what he can do, and it's like this guy literally just changed his entire track in the NFL, I think. But so many guys have worked so hard, or so many athletes across the board have worked so hard to get to a point where they can play at a professional level. And to say, like, we're going to have to stop it for a year. I mean, we're all artists and actors here too. Like, if I was ever told, like, hey, well, I have been told actually kind of like you can't act for a while.
6 months. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, it would, I don't know how I'd handle that news. I really don't. I don't know what I would do.
Here's what I found when I was covering the XFL. We obviously, that's a great example because you had these guys that were making 50, 100, 250 grand a year to play on a national stage, on ABC, on Fox, on FS1. These guys had their second shot and then COVID shut it down. So right. I did talk to a few of them about what it's like. And they talk about what a gut punch it was to finally be able to play on a stage again. Granted, it wasn't the NFL, but it was meant to be something that can build them back to the NFL.
Yeah.
Now at this point, the XFL is back by 2022. Now what they have is they have the Spring League, which is this football league, which is on FS1. So there's like 6 teams in there. Some of the XFL holdouts are there. Vincent Papil, if you remember him from the Philadelphia Eagles, his son is in that league. I saw him catch a touchdown the other day. Yeah, his father, Vince Papil.
Is he invincible?
I don't know. He was actually standing by himself up in the stands, but it was funny because he's sitting there and he's, I guess he's like either, I'm not sure if he's a GM or minority owner or something for this team. And it was so funny because all the feelings that I saw from watching the players and covering the players on the XFL, I saw again with the Spring League. Now, the Spring League, these guys aren't even getting paid. They get food, they get travel, they get hotel. That's it. With the XFL, these guys were making, a decent living.
Right.
But the point is that they lost with COVID. They lost a lot of them that shot to ever break back into the NFL, which is they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And that's the part that sucks.
Even as backups too, you get a lot of guys who
this thing is affecting. This thing.
We just lost you for a second.
Go, Mike.
Yeah, you dropped for a split second.
I was just saying. So like the idea that like COVID is affecting every single facet of humanity right now for all of us, and it's like how I cannot wait to see.
We just lose them.
The stories we're gonna learn. I mean,
I want to
talk to professional athletes. Mm-hmm. Sorry, guys, my internet connection can be a little wonky.
That's okay.
So I apologize if I duck in and out.
That's okay.
One of the most heartbreaking stories that I actually witnessed, kind of experienced, but not I witnessed personally was due to COVID, was at FDU. We had a senior power forward was like 8 points away from 1,000 for her career. And they were on a play. The women's basketball team actually went on a nice run in the postseason and made it to the semifinals for the conference, and they canceled the tournament. And the team she was scheduled to play the next game, like 2 or 3 days later, 2 or 3 days, after they had canceled, she was averaging like 20 points a game against. And we were like, the whole down the stretch, like everybody's rooting for her. Wonderful girl named Lauren Facial. We're like, she's going to get it. She's going to get it. She's going to get it. And we kind of all bought in. We're like, she's going to get it the next game on the road. We might be taking a trip to Robert Morris for the conference championship. And then all of a sudden we get the alert, like NEC cancels postseason tournament. We're like, no. And I'm like, she's done. Like, it was like, she doesn't even get those games back because it's postseason. She's played her 4 years. I was like, this is one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever witnessed in college sports. I was like, I felt so bad for her.
But I'd still venture to say a
Yeah.
lot of the scouts are still looking at that and taking that into effect. I mean, she's
Well,
put,
yeah,
she put
that's-
on 922. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead, Mikey.
Well, for sure. But I think to his point, like that personal accolade, that thing that she was so close to grabbing. And again, I'm hoping that some athletes out there are documenting and journaling because stories of perseverance, I think these will be important. You know who I'd like to also really kind of hear from and hope that they're okay and that they're taking care of themselves are Olympic athletes.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a whole other ball game. You know, I've read some stories just about like the mental fortitude it takes to compete in the Olympics, to prepare for the Olympics, and to be ready to compete, to be in the Olympics, right, is so high. And by taking a year out of their life of training, it's like it throws them off. It throws people off so much that they you know, losing a year of your living space, let's call it, you know, your body changes over a year.
And the funny thing about that, yeah,
You know, the 20s is where it's at, man. That's your, you know, and so it can put
especially
people out
with
pretty
gymnasts,
quick.
their bodies are like maintaining a certain size
Swimmers.
and weight and swimmers and everything. Yeah.
So I'll be interested to kind of see the stories.
now
But
it's my understanding that they're going to do the Olympics in 2021, right?
yeah,
So-
I think they pushed it just 1 year.
2021, yes.
Yeah, so they're not losing everything, but yeah, it's going to throw them off their schedule.
Well,
Because
but they lost a year though, and
True.
a year,
Yeah,
and
I mean-
like what we're saying.
you can make it up, but I mean, for a lot of those athletes, they've been training since 2004 for 2020. You know, 2020 was always the end game to be at their peak. Every bit, every workout, every nutrition, everything, their entire life was built to summer of 2020. Now it's 21. It's going to throw them off a little bit. I think these guys will be strong enough to rebound because their lives are pretty much run by, you know, the coaching staff and everything else involved in there. But it'll be interesting to see how some of the athletes handle 2021 at that point. It's true. It's a good point.
Yeah. They have the, like you said,
It's going to be the trainers.
go ahead,
No,
Mike.
go ahead, man.
Yeah.
With like Scott said, it's Olympic sports in comparison to all other sports is such a like the timetable is so strict and so like
So different.
it's not there's not as much flexibility
They're
because
they're regimented. Yeah.
yeah, and it's
Like wrestlers, I used to wrestle too. And like, imagine being a wrestler that's getting ready for the Olympics and you're trying to make your weight, you're trying to maintain that weight. And it is so hard. And I don't know if any of you guys have wrestled before, but like maintaining weight is, I don't wish it on my worst enemy. Nah, there's one person I wish it on. But anyway, but maintaining weight is so hard to do. And to ask an athlete to do it to a point to get you ready, to get you at your maximum place for competition in that year. And then do you mean like, now you got to wait another year. You got to maintain your weight another year. And your body's going to do something over this next year that probably wasn't, you know, it's crazy.
That's
But
true. Yeah.
you know, there's still football going on.
Yes.
You know, the NFL is still playing. We're still watching Tom Brady beat Tom Brady.
How do you feel about Tom Brady? And if you got a second to
Dude,
develop
okay.
it. Give me your thoughts here.
I lived in Boston actually for about 6 years. And I lived there when the Patriots started to just become what they became, the dynasty they became. And, you know, I've never been a fan of Tom Brady because so this is a really good question. I don't like Tom Brady the way I don't like my opponent. I respect Tom Brady because I appreciate football and I appreciate talent and I appreciate leadership. And if anything, he's shown to me all three of those things. I mean, he's going to do something that's going to piss off more people than even were pissed at him when he was in New England. He's going to go and he's going to end up winning a Super Bowl with Tampa. He's going to do something like that, or he's going to get him to the Super Bowl. Like he's going to do something that no other quarterback has ever done after leaving a team in their peak. Like, or not in the peak. He's definitely on the end of his years, but like when Montana went to Kansas City or Favre went to, New York, like he's succeeding, I think, in a way. Although Montana did pretty good in Kansas City. He wasn't terrible.
They did get to the playoffs one year. Yeah. And then
they got to the playoffs. Yeah. So, I mean, he did his job there, which is great. But I just think Tom Brady is not done yet either. Like, I think this guy's going to play till he's 50, 55 years old. I will also say that it also helps that every single time he's played football, he's had an offensive line that was built like the wall that Trump's building around the White House. Like, you know what I mean? Like, nobody ever touches him. So that helps your career, to be able to play at that level with that kind of help. Being said, the decision-making, you guys remember, was it last season or the season before when Romo called, I think it was a playoff game and it was Brady, it was the Patriots. And Romo literally talked us through the entire drive of how he's going to go to Welker here, or not Welker, to Edelman here. Edelman here. He's going to do this, and he did the entire thing like 2 minutes. He called every single play right, and it's like right because that's what playoff caliber quarterbacks do is they see exactly how they're going to play it. But two, it just shows that like Tom Brady's just one of the smartest quarterbacks I think to play football. So no, I hate him, but I also think he's probably one of the best, quarterbacks I've ever seen.
That's fair. I mean, it's one of those things that if he was on your team, you'd love the heck out of him, but because
yeah, exactly. That's a great point. Like I hated Peyton Manning, because of all of his wizardry that he would pull off, before the snap until it was my wizardry. And then I was like, oh, this is cool. This wizardry is cool. It's going to win us the Super Bowl. So.
Well, I was going to say, you got the old school Denver hat on.
Man.
The old style, which I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
That's the Elway era right there. And
Yeah.
Admittedly, I preferred those old school uniforms to the one that, they got in the 90s and now even. But I mean,
hey, listen, man. Yeah, I do miss the Orange Crush. Like the orange and the light blue. Like that was an odd form. And that's what I grew up with. Was wearing those jerseys and having those helmets in my house. So
you take it for granted, though. That's the problem. When you
do.
Yeah.
And then you find places like Mitchell and Ness who carry all these retro stuff, and you're like, oh, sweet man. One of the saddest things is, as I've gotten older, I used to bartend for a while, and at the bar I worked at was a pretty crazy sports bar, and I'd have my this Broncos hat on, and the number of millennials that would come in and say like, oh man, you like the Durham Bulls? And it's like,
oh God,
come on. How do you know, or how do you think this is a Durham Bulls hat and not a Broncos hat? And you're way younger than me. It was just like, it was shocking. It just shocked me. But no, this is the original. This is the one. This is the one that matters.
That's the Elway one right there too.
Yeah, that's right. This is This is the first Super Bowl winning one. No, that's not right.
No,
they won after they changed.
We changed our uniforms. That's right.
Yeah, we just talked about Peyton there. So,
but but the first one we won, that was the helicopter game when Elway did the helicopter.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Because it was 97 and 98. They won with Elway, I think, right?
Yes.
97, 98.
Yeah, 97, 98. And then obviously you were I guess at that point 18-ish. Something like that?
No, 97. I was 20.
You're 20. Okay.
19 or 20.
Aaron
yeah.
was 12.
I know. Yeah.
So. Who's that?
Yeah. I was in college. I was definitely in college because I remember I went to Crested Butte, Colorado, which is a ski town, with some friends. We're like, we're going to watch the Super Bowl. It's like, yeah, that's a great idea. And then we get there and I realize that like, well, wait, if they win this Super Bowl, who are we going to celebrate with? Like, we're in Crested Butte, Colorado. We're so far away from everything. And then they did win. But we made up for it the next year because we repeated against the Atlanta Falcons. And so that time I was in Denver.
The one thing about that, and this is something that a lot of people don't talk about, is John Elway restructured his contract to a literal league minimum on that second year to make sure that basically everybody on the team was able to be brought back for his shot to repeat. If he did not restructure that contract and basically take frankly almost no money for what, for the Hall of Fame skills that he had, they would not have repeated. So I give a lot of credit to him for that.
Had the defense we had. Yeah. Because I think I'm trying to think of some of the contracts we got that year. It was such a long time ago. I'd have to look back, but you're absolutely right. Like if he doesn't restructure there, we do not have money to bring in talent that we needed to win that championship. It's the same thing. I think, I don't know what Peyton's contract was at the very end, but there was just something so selfless about his play, about what he wanted in that season that we did win it. It was incredible to watch because he and again, good quarterbacks will always give it over to their defense to say, like, I can't win without. It's a lot easier to win when the other team's not putting up points, and so Elway, when he did that was why, I mean, the guy is an icon in the state of Colorado, probably also a little bit of Nebraska and Wyoming and Utah. He's a legend. He's a legend. And it's interesting because I think that's why we've given him so much, I don't want to use the word rope, so much
slack
leeway. Yeah. Slack. Yeah. With his GM, VP decisions. But it's John Elway.
Yeah.
The guy knows how to win. So, and look, I think he found it with Drew Lock. I think Drew Lock is legitimate. I love watching him. His swagger. And that's the cool thing, man. It feels like we're watching the swagger that Elway had kind of come back into Mile High Stadium. It's a lot of fun.
It's been a struggle for you guys for a few years, and you're actually running the risk of having a fourth straight losing season, which apparently has not happened since Nixon was president.
Sorry, this season it doesn't count. This season has an asterisk.
It's a COVID count, but
COVID 2020 does not count.
Yeah,
no. 2020 doesn't count for anything.
I'll say that for the Giants too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. If your team is, can we cuss on this thing?
No, not really.
Okay,
keep it.
Copy that.
FCC is anything below it. Yeah,
this team,
ass and crap are fine.
If your team can't play well, is not playing well, is having a rough season, just shake it off. This is all scrimmage, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, I can
it's
think
all
of that.
Practice.
But that also would mean then that the last two games that Drew Lock had, where he did have 5 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, that in turn therefore would not count. Does that count?
True.
Yes.
But it's still a good scrimmage though. It's a good practice. I loved watching that practice.
Yeah, no, he's doing a lot. Drew Lock is actually doing a lot with a lot of injuries on the offensive side of the ball too. Like I've got Noah Fant on my fantasy team, the guys who are part of my commentary on Facebook Messenger of my fantasy team having an Atlanta Falcons like meltdown from the 4:00 games on. I was projected for like 45 points and I got 15 from like 4 people, but it was all like scenarios, like it's vintage 2020. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't I was like,
yep.
The Steelers, the Saints blew out the Bucs, so Michael Thomas didn't play that much, and James Conner just got stuffed. I was like, what else could possibly go wrong? I'm like, oh, it's 2020. Never mind. Like, I totally get it. But Locke's doing well. Like Tim Patrick looks good when he's healthy. Noah Fant,
he looks awesome.
Good
and Jerry Jeudy looks like he was the right pick. Like, what an awesome pick for Drew Lock to have. I'd also like to say too, and we're not talking a lot about it in Denver country because of some of the other stuff, but like our offensive line is playing way better than they did last year. I mean, that's not entirely true. Our offensive line is playing to the talents of Drew Lock, which is what they were built for. Like that's why they were, brought in and put in places in terms of free agency and the draft and whatnot. And then, but because when you put in the other guys, the problem is the offense isn't built around them, and Haskell and not Haskell. I'm blanking on my backup's name. The kid from not Ripon, but the one that started out this year.
Driscoll.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jeff Driscoll.
Yep, and Driscoll and Ripon, right? Mm-hmm. They're not as well. Ripon's a little more mobile, but not as mobile as Locke. And also, you see Drew Lock make football decisions. Like I said, that when you watch a really good quarterback like Tom Brady, Roethlisberger, I'm going to say it, Nick Foles. The decision making is there, and the other two guys just weren't quick enough, and our offensive line isn't built to deal with that. Like our offensive line is built to deal with 3-second drop, balls out. You know, if you're in a drop back, 5-sec, balls out. Like you watch it, right? Rob, about like Noah Fant. Noah Fant was looking. I was worried about Noah Fant because last year he had some major drops in major situations, and I was like, "Look, man, you were drafted to kind of be our Gronkowski. Like you have that skill set." Whoa,
you all right?
The city is falling down.
There's another earthquake on the East Coast.
Well, that's hilarious. That's never happened. Anyway, we'll just put that to the side.
I thought the camera was tipping, and I'm like, he's not moving though.
That was hilarious. But anyway, so yeah, you know, Drew Lock's skill set, they're prepared for that. So if you're not the kind of guy that lets the ball go, no Fant. No Fant was really disappointing me last year. I was worried that he was going to be a bust, and then this year he just shows up and he's in great shape, ready to play football, making really good decisions, blocking, which is a big deal, but starting to look like that star. And also the kid from Missouri too, who played with Drew Lock, who's our rookie this year, and he just got hurt too. I can't pronounce his last name.
Aguabuena. I know who you're talking about. The tight end. Aquabanum or something like that.
Yeah, and I just don't want to ruin his name, so I would say it if I was more comfortable with it. But he's a really great player, and the connection between him and Lock is so obvious. So we were sitting there going, wow, we now have this amazing 2 tight end powerhouse like the Patriots back in the day. And then they both get hurt. And it's hard to watch because the other thing, and I hate to keep bringing it back, but it's just so prevalent. You know, with COVID, these guys probably didn't have the same routines that they had last year, you know, any player. And so remember the first day of NFL weekend, that first weekend, and how all these players were just getting destroyed. And you're watching San Francisco and you're like, oh my God, like what are we doing? We're putting these guys in harm's way. And, you know, but it seems like they were prepared for it and ready for it. And like we said, it's persevere, move on. They're playing, and some teams are playing really well. Pittsburgh. Wow. Pittsburgh. How about
Mike Tomlin not have like another non-losing season? Like
unbelievable.
It really put into perspective how they played like last year, like how competitive he is as a coach. And he's done some things in the past, like Jared will remember this as a Ravens fan, like when he stepped on the field during the kick return to stop Torrey Smith, to slow him down. Then he had the game against the Chargers when they were going to lose, and he jumped off sides like 5 or 6 times in a row deliberately. And he, in the past, he's done some other things, but then you look at that and he went 8-8 with like a 3rd and 4th string quarterback last year. And you're like, this guy can coach. He's competitive. And when he's not getting in his own way, doing kind of some childish things, he is arguably one of the top probably 3 coaches in the league right now. Yeah.
And easily top 10 ever.
Yeah.
I mean, ever. Like, I love Mike Tomlin. It's funny you talk about that step on the field because that was so dirty and stupid, but it was also so amazing because it just showed that like these guys are competitors too. And, you know, if they want to mix it, the one thing I always see about Mike Tomlin, man, whenever I watch him coach, I'm like, this guy would be on that field in a second if he could be. Like, he is literally playing the game in his body on the sidelines. I love him. Mike Tomlin might be one of my favorite coaches of all time. And just an awesome guy. Like, I just know that watching a guy like that and the way he talks about his players and about his team, I would love to play for a coach like him, without a doubt. You know, you can just tell he cares. He cares deeply. So, I mean, they all do. You can't be an NFL coach if you don't care. Like, I've always said that.
He's got that polarizing, like Rex Ryan type personality, I think, too. Not as like, you know,
I don't know,
media boisterous, but he's got like his players rally around him. They're like, they play for him. They're like, okay, we're going out. We're going to have a good game plan. Coach is going to get us ready, and we're going to do this. Whereas you look at other teams, like the Jets are a hot mess. Like, I think there's guys who don't want to play for Adam Gase in that locker room, and they're trying to get at it. They're like, just get me out of here. Like,
I know this is going to be
There's
like
been a few. There's been a few that have already.
This is going to be seen and heard by a lot of people, but I mean, as a Broncos fan, like, yeah, Adam Gase is. I don't know what the situation is, man. Like, every team he's gone to, there just seems to be players that like have a real beef with his coaching style, I guess.
I'm a Miami fan. I was like, I had the Adam Gase experience for 3 years. Like, I was done with it. And then it got closer to home, but I'm like, at least I can root against it now. It's in my favor right now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But it is interesting because it's like, he keeps getting chances and you start to go, well, yeah, but like, if he can't get his locker room to support him, like if he can't get the entire team behind him, it's just, I don't see how that works in an NFL franchise. But
I'm starting to think he might be a better college coach, because one thing he struggles with is like the superstars, like the big personalities.
Well, yeah,
and stuff like that.
And I think college coach, even just a position coach, he was a great offensive coordinator, and I think that it was like when we had Wade Phillips as our head coach, we all loved the fact that Wade Phillips was our head coach because he was our defensive coordinator forever. And so we're like, yeah, come on, Wade Phillips. And then for 2 years, 3 years, it was like, okay, maybe Wade Phillips, you're just not head coach material. Like, you're better. And he knew that. And he was like, yep, going to go out with grace. And now I'm going to go coach some other teams. And I'm going to show you how good of a defensive coordinator I am, because he was amazing. And I think that's, you see some head coaches, Matt, the Detroit Lions, Matt, I'm forgetting his last name.
I know, but another one is another good example of that is Spagnuolo, who was the Giants head coach.
Oh yeah,
and he was with the Rams and everything, and then he's the Giants defensive coordinator, and now he's coordinating the Chiefs, and that's his forte. Like, he's a better coordinator than he is a head coach.
100%.
Matt Patricia is the Detroit.
Matt Patricia, thank you. Yeah. He's another example, because his defenses in New England, those were his defenses. You know what I mean? He had the talent too. He had one of the most talented linebacking crews I think I've ever seen. But he was a great defensive coach. And I just think, to your point, like, there's a difference between managing one room for meetings and managing 15 rooms for meetings, and managing the egos in each one of those rooms. When you're a defensive coordinator or an offensive coordinator, you're dealing with one set of egos. And for the most part, if you're the offensive coordinator, you know who your person is, like whether it's your quarterback, or unless you're like the Titans and it's like, well, Derrick Henry's the guy, but it's managed. You don't have to manage all of them,
So, Mike, I'm sorry, I got to cut you off, but we have to actually cut out now.
Oh, cool.
It's advertising. It's commercial advert. No. Thank you, please.
Yeah. Thank you for being on.
I'd love to have you
so much.
I'd love to have you back on at some point, but since I got the 1 minute left,
I talk a lot, man.
No, listen. I loved it. But how can people, find out more about you, get in touch with you, social media, all that?
So if you want to check me out, I'm on Instagram, under the big fella, all one word, lowercase. That's my Instagram account. That's the account I'm aged now. I'm at my Eastern Carolina Pirates.
Yeah.
I tried to give it up, but he wouldn't give it up. Am I cutting out?
No, you're fine. You're fine.
No, it's my internet, because it says my internet connection is unstable. Anyway, Mike Houston to Twitter, big fella, all lowercase, Instagram. I don't use Facebook, and you can follow me that way. Heads up on my Twitter. I'm very political, so just beware of that. On my Instagram, it's more about the acting stuff, the entertainment stuff. I have a coaching business, so
nice.
I post stuff about that, about coaching for auditions and whatnot. So yeah, you can get in touch with me that way.
Cool beans. So this is going to do it for me. Mike, thank you very much. You're Mike Houston from Orange is the New Black, Boardwalk Empire, Sneaky Pete. I think about a half a dozen episodes of Blue Bloods as well. This show can also be heard on the Barn Burner Radio Network at 122 different podcast platforms between the U.S., Canada, and Europe. For me, I'm Scott Schertzen. For Jared Robeson, Rob Stats, and our special guest, Mike Houston. This has been the Sports Den. Thanks as always, and stay awesome.